Welcome to AfterSOF. We are SOF veterans connecting with the culture that influenced our lives and engaging along our journey to create community. This is the AfterSOF podcast. I'm Patrick Brennan, former Green Beret. My co-host here is Daniel Bell, and he's a former SOF medic. And our first guest for this initial podcast show is Ed Richter, who is also a former Green Beret who has joined the world of social work and is now a PhD candidate. Welcome, guys.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah. Welcome, Ed. So let's kick this thing off with a little discussion about current events. Probably everybody is seeing headlines on things happening in Eastern Europe, Russia, Ukraine. And, as this is a SOF-focused podcast, maybe a little perspective on through a SOF lens of what's happening over there. Daniel, you want to kick things off?
Well, I think the interesting thing that we can kind of focus on is what we see with a lot of Green Berets that are working over in Ukraine to provide some humanitarian relief. There's Ryan Hendrickson, a former 7th Group guy, and you can follow him on social media regularly, and you see how he's going and transporting people out of difficult areas. A guy who went through the Q course with you is one of our friends who has been over there to provide some humanitarian relief. I was just on the phone with him earlier, and we were talking about how as everything changes, a lot of the NGOs are moving more into Ukraine, and how we're adapting to make sure we're able to be involved. I think no matter where you fall on this issue, being able to help other people in this crisis, it's ultimately a humanitarian crisis. Being able to go over there and provide aid and safety for them is important.
Yeah.
Because as we were talking about earlier, you can go down this rabbit hole of who's right, who's wrong, whatever. But
there's a ton of information, right? Like the news cycle, depending on what channel you watch, might have different information, but ultimately there's a lot of information, especially with Western nations, and I'm sure Eastern nations are getting a different part of the story. But, after finishing up 20 years of conflict, it's not really finished, but to the political sense of being finished, conflict in third world countries moving into something that's, first world country, right? Talk about this the other day of just what that looks like, not necessarily picking sides, because there's not going to be a winner, right? I mean, you're thinking about a suburb of your local community that just got rocketed, right? So that perspective is vastly different than, bombing mud huts in a desert, right? Like there's real impact on a global level of what's happening. So interesting stuff. The what's cool is the humanitarian part of it, right? And so Daniel, I know you've been working a little bit on this as far as taking skill sets of SOF veterans and instead of more of a kinetic role that we're used to, leveraging that into the humanitarian effort, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously guys that want to do it and are getting fulfillment out of that.
Well, yeah, I think that the requirements of that, it's a good transition piece from having been engaged in combat to saying, hey, I can do this to help someone else out, rather than just contracting. There are a lot of people who contract, and part of that, I think we may get into the discussion a little bit more with Ed on this, but a lot of people, when they finish up their time, whether they're just doing an enlistment or a couple enlistments and getting out, or they're retiring, they see their value most in that contracting role. And there are other opportunities where we can use that to help someone out, rather than to be part of that whole defense mechanism. We can actually say, okay, we're going to step in here with those of us from the medical side of the SOF world. We can say, hey, we're going to work with Doctors Without Borders, for instance, or some other organization that provides medical aid. Right now, the guys that we've been working with, they're doing medical training, and that seems to be a pretty big part of it. And for the Green Beret, you don't even have to be an 18 Delta. You could be an 18 Bravo, Tactical Combat Casualty Care skill set and go in and help train people to be able to take care of themselves if there were a rocket attack. There's a lot of things that provide opportunity from that combat skill set, or what we view as a combat skill set, to transition into a role of either business or humanitarian aid. There's a lot of opportunity that I don't think everybody contemplates as they're getting out of the military.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, Ed, I mean, you've got a little bit of, I don't want to say a little bit, but it seems like you got a lot of experience with, the quote unquote transition, right? So basically, you were a Green Beret for over a decade, right? And transitioned into more of a different field. You want to tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me here. Yeah, all my team time was in one of the guard units, and that was a great experience, and got to do a couple of deployments to Afghanistan with them, and that was fantastic. But I quickly saw the limits of what I would be able to share with them should I become injured into a way that I wouldn't be able to stay, right? So I thought after my first deployment, man, I need to have some sort of a backup plan should that happen. And so I started going to school, and thought, man, maybe counseling would be something I'd be interested in. Very different, but it would allow me to still be around like other veterans in that field. And everybody I talked to, they said, if you want to work for the DoD or you want to work for the VA, probably social work is going to be better than counseling. But, okay, well, I don't feel very social worky, but I'll go that direction. And though as I went through the training, a lot of the times I was questioning, man, this is the right place for me. But I assure you, for the other former SF guys that are now social workers out there, hang in there. It is the right place for us to go. It's as diverse as a career field as being an SF guy is, right? You don't just have to be corner yourself and doing direct action stuff. Social work allows you to do the clinical role, which is something I was really interested in, and doing that clinical counseling and psychotherapy style stuff, or into policy or into teaching or advocacy, or even the humanitarian role that you guys were talking about for Ukraine. As I went through school for that and started working at the VA as a guard guy, and eventually after a year of team sergeant time, I decided, man, it's probably time to switch and just do that full time. So I left SF and went over to a Army Reserve mental health unit, and then back to active duty as a mental health guy, which has been an awesome experience. So now I'm back in school pursuing a PhD in social work, and that's been pretty cool too.
Yeah. I mean, so from Green Beret to social work, right? Like you hinted on that. I'm sure. Like, what was the reaction of the guys on your team, and did you get support? Were they excited for you? Was it more of a, what are you doing, Ed?
Yeah. Lots of support from everybody on our team. I think more than half the guys had master's degrees, and everybody but one had a bachelor's degree, and they were working on those. So education for that team. And everybody knows that every team is different, and they've got their different personality, but those guys were all very supportive of that. So that was pretty great. To me, there's lots of overlap that I can see. I don't know if everybody else sees that, but as far as going into an environment where you're trying to convince somebody to do something maybe they're uncomfortable with, or to make a decision they're uncomfortable with. To me, it's the same thing as social work, right? We got this, for me, in the clinical role, we've got a customer that comes in and they're like, I don't know if I really want to address this problem right now that's causing me all this distress. We convince them that, yeah, this is the right thing to do, and here's the way that we're gonna accomplish that mission, and I can help them along the way, but right, I'm not going to do it for them. And for the people that follow through with that, man, they just are so happy that they did. Whether it's for my support guys or my other SF guys, and the people that go through mental health come on the other side. And you see it, right? They're in a room full of people, and they're the ones that are going to stand up and shout. They're like, man, I go to mental health, and, things have, gone so well for me. And they really beat that drum, and it's fantastic. And there's so many other people in the room that are in their mind, they're still thinking like, man, I don't know if I'm ready to go in there and take that risk.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. No, I mean, that seems to be, from my own personal journey, right? I got out in 2010. So, I was a part of the early years of the war, and, same with Daniel. You know, I probably went through about 10-year period of just like, no, I can figure it out, right?
Yeah.
I'm tough. I don't need to do that, right? And it just eats away at you, right? Like you try to maybe try to fill that hole a little bit with a different career or work or something that will distract you. Maybe that's the right word. But
I go all in on that, right? And my time at the VA, I saw guys that did their time in Vietnam and they got out. They went to school. They graduated with a college degree. They started a family. They started a second career or their first real career, right? They worked there for 30 years, and they're crushing it. Like as a citizen, they're doing everything that we're asking for, and they retire, and within weeks, all of a sudden, dreams start coming back, intrusive thoughts start coming back, and they come in there like, man, I've been doing so well. Like, it's never ever been an issue. Like, why now? And they've been able to distract themselves effectively for so long, and to me, I'm excited about it because that tells me like their brain is still functioning very well, and that their brain wants to go back and process this previous trauma. But at the same time, for them, this is super scary. This is something they've avoided for a long time. There's a long time doing education and normalizing, like, this is how this is going to go down. This is really a normal thing. And convincing the person, like, let's instead of running away from it, like, let's go towards the fire and see what happens.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's you nailed it, right? Like I was checking all of the boxes of what it took to be a good husband and a father of like whatever society had created that list, right? Like you need to do this, you need to pick your kids up from school, you need to be involved in that. And, and I was doing all those things, and I felt like I was being really successful with that, but I was still kind of miserable, and, so I can definitely see that.
And how much of that is, I know we're kind of moving towards transition stuff here. How much of that is just your transition out of SOF or out of the military versus an abnormal response to trauma or being in combat or something, right? Like, maybe some of that is just, man, this transition just sucks and it's hard and it's not what I want, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that doesn't mean you need to go in for counseling, or maybe that's just, how many guys are thinking, well, maybe this is just my life and I'm never going to be happy. I'm never going to be able to replace the time I had with the dudes on the team, the experience that I had on those deployments, or having the experience in the military. I'm just never going to have that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the guys I served with, we were talking about this, recently on a little retreat we did. It was this concept of like, especially for us being, doing the things we did at a young age.
Yeah.
We lived like this extraordinary life in this super compacted time frame. And then you get out and not so much the transition part of it, but it's like now you have to spend the rest of your life sort of almost doing ordinary things, right? It's just the mundane part of like being involved in your kid's school, like just going to work, whatever those things are. And you're no longer jumping out of airplanes or, being prepared to do helicopter infills in a conflict zone. Like there's no adrenaline rush anymore, right? Some of those addictive feelings, but yeah, kind of getting used to just the mundane part of life, right?
Yeah, I've got a buddy, David Bellavia. He was telling me, he goes, I look at PTSD as being this thing where you realize you'll never be as cool as you were in that one moment. And I maybe he's misattributing like the whole PTSD, but there's that reality that we experience that, hey, I just did the coolest thing I will probably ever do in my entire life, and now I'm out of that. Like that experience is not within my grasp. So how do we move from that moment? And as we're having this conversation, this kind of feeds back into where Ed is education. Like you got out, you got your undergrad. I got out, I got my undergrad. I finished up a master's. Ed is in a PhD. Like we do these other things that play into that When you're looking at this bigger picture, Ed, like, can you talk a little bit about the role of education?
Yeah, the GI Bill is a fantastic resource, along with lots of the other state-sponsored programs. And I know that it's really attractive for people all over the military to get out and just use that and say, I don't know exactly what I want to do, so I'm just going to start going to school, collect that money, and it's kind of like going to be this buffer time. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there's lots of guys that get to the end of that and realize, man, I wasted a lot of that money. Really, we see time and time again, study after study, as the guys that are getting out are not preparing for that transition long enough in advance. So I realize there's going to be some people that are transition out of the military faster than they anticipate, whether there's an injury or some sort of other circumstance that quickly gets them discharged. But for the typical person who's going to ETS or retire, like, you knew that time was coming, and how long were you actively preparing in advance for that transition out? And by preparing, I think the two big questions we're going to ask ourselves is, where am I going to go, and what am I going to do? The Army's going to send you wherever you want. You can go back home, you can stay where you're at, you can go to anywhere you want. So where are you going to go, and then what are you going to do? And I think the longer that you spend preparing for that, what are you going to do question, the higher likelihood that you're going to stay at that first job. Because we know a lot of guys get out and go to that first job, and they're gone within the first year, right? Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. Because they're still kind of shaking the Army out of their system, which is fine, but I wonder how uncomfortable that was and how clunky that first job was, versus if they would have spent more time, like, actively and deliberately planning for what's going to be my purpose in life, what's going to be my identity now that I get out. Mm-hmm. Am I going to wear a shirt that says Team Coca-Cola? Is it going to say Team Pepsi? Is it going to say Team whatever insurance company, like, whatever it is? Like, we know after our time in the military how to be a team player, and we can go all in on it. Really, I would be asking that person, like, is your identity and your purpose in life, can you go all in on that? Is it going to give you what you want, whether it's I just want to go and pursue money, or do I want to go and pursue a purpose, or some combination in between? I think there's tons of companies out there that are learning more and more that, man, these guys coming out of the military are a great investment. They put up better numbers than anybody else. Our education is on par with everybody else, and they're wanting to hire us. And it's going to be, how do we expedite that transitional process where I show up ready to go, and the Army is out of my system, and now I'm ready to be on this next team.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember the piece I did, right? And probably a lot of that has to do with op tempo, right? With, especially in the SOF community. I mean, I came back from Afghanistan on a direct flight, like right before Christmas, and my ETS date was March 10th, right? Like there was no, it was like, okay, it's over, we'll see you later. Like there wasn't a transition. It was like, okay, hard stop, next phase. But that was 2010, right in the middle of the war. So yeah. Something that I think you're doing a study on this, right, Ed? I mean, you're asking SOF veterans like what that experience was like, and yeah. So thanks for bringing that up. We're still in the data collection days, and I'm blasting it all over LinkedIn and all the SF Facebook groups, and the SFA is sending it out. I think 5 other SF-centric veteran service organizations are passing it out as well. And one of the things, we're trying to have the biggest sample as we can, because we know even though SF is a small population, it's the largest SOF population. We account for the largest amount of SOF missions. We're responsible for the most SOF casualties. We carry a lot of the combat load, yet no one's asked, what is it like for an SF guy after discharge? Where does an SF guy stand at discharge? What is their education level? Are they married? Are they not? Do they have any kids? How many deployments have they been on? Do they have a plan at discharge? We've got some data that's collected at selection, which is great, but that doesn't account for even the people who graduate the Q course. And that certainly doesn't account for what does that guy now look like at discharge versus what they looked at like at selection.
And then for the guys that fill the survey that have already been out, and this is open for SF guys of all generations, on top of looking at those same variables and when they got out, but how their life is now, and how do we look at their satisfaction with life, and how do they evaluate their ease of transition. A lot of the current research out there that looks at similar variables, it's hard to get a hold of veterans because once you're out of the military, you're cut loose and kind of floating around, right? So they just collect whoever's going to take it. So they're pulling in the Navy guys, they're pulling in the Air Force guys, and I'd like to think that the person that drives the snowplow for the Air Force blowing off a landing strip up in North Dakota versus the Submariner in the Navy versus the 11 Bravo, like I can say that I assume they have a different experience in the military, but research supports that as well. So we know that branch, we know that occupation means different experiences, and that's going to be different experiences in that transition as well. So I'm trying to say, at least just to start, we're going to pick with SF guys because that's what I used to be, and those are people I'm interested in for this study, and we're going to see where do those guys stand. So it's the first that's really ever been done. It's not super mental health focused. It's not looking at risk of suicide or substance abuse, but just hitting the basics, like where are we at transition? And I think this is going to be a great piece in establishing a foundation for future projects on what do we do to help those guys have a better transition in the future.
Yeah. So do you have like a hard stop deadline on when you're done with the survey, or?
Yeah, it's going to be open all summer. We're going to continue to push it out throughout the summer. I wish I could throw out, how many people I would want to take this survey, but the answer is always going to be more.
Yes.
Right.
I think some of the open source stuff that I found talks about putting about 700 people through the Q course-ish through the years. We'll say maybe through the past 40 years. If that's true or kind of consistent, it'd be great to have about 700 people just to say, all right, this kind of represents, maybe this will equate to 1 year. If we've been doing this since 1959, we should have at least 30,000 people that have through the Q course. I'm going to say, we got 700. That'd be a pretty awesome sampling.
Right.
Yeah.
They have this statistical power.
I think there's some memes out there that will kind of do a visual explanation of guys pre-selection and then at discharge, right? I saw one today. It was RoboCop in pieces, right? That's probably accurate to some level, but
I could probably have a lot more participation if there was more memes.
Yeah. Yes. There you go. That's a secret ingredient is memes.
Yeah, meme-driven data.
Yeah, incorporate that in your survey. So, as you're kind of doing this, you're kind of probably meeting a lot of different people as part of your study and getting the word out there. What do you want to see the SOF community do next, right? Daniel, this too, we talk a lot about community, right? And the SOF community. But what is that? And where do we take it from here, right? 20 years of war is over. We've got multiple generations from different conflicts all over the world in SOF, and now, even more conflict in Eastern Europe. So where do you want to see it, Daniel? Where do you want to see community go? What does that mean?
I don't know. We talked I think between you and we've had a lot of conversations with Ed individually. One of the organizations he's involved with that we're part of is the Special Forces Association. So there's this whole what's it called, Ed? Special Forces for Life. That's what? Yeah. So there's the Special Forces for Life, and I think that's one of the unique things about Special Forces. My conversation with Matt Lambden from 18 Series Bags, he's a little bit more skeptical about the connection of people, but I think that there's potential with these organizations to bring people in where they go, okay, I'm not by myself. There's no reason to be isolated, and I don't know. Hopefully, Ed, your research is able to help point us in the right direction too. Where is that engagement point and if we start it before someone's getting out, and if we actually talk about that plan, how are we going to be able to make it more successful? And part of that is like taking a look at all these organizations, whether it's like for us, it's the Night Stalker Association, or one of the Ranger associations, or what's his name that works with the Rangers,
SOA or
Carl Munger.
Oh yeah,
So you take
Gallant Few.
Yeah, the Gallant Few, like whatever the organization is, we know that they're trying to find that place where they engage. So what I'm looking at, and I think back through my time period, I came back from deployment. I went out and did this thing with DevGru, and a week and a half later, I was on terminal leave. Right, like from deployment to TDY to out of the Army, and I went to college. I withdrew from college because that was not. I was like, I'm a 26-year-old man,
right,
with all these kids. And so going back to what Ed was talking about with some of this stuff, like you withdraw, and so you take a little bit longer to finish up your education, or you like there's these different things where everything points you back to this. Hey, there needs to be planning. So what I'd like to see is some sort of an engagement from all of the different special operations units within the military, is like some sort of engagement where they help people to have a plan, because I think in the long run, that's going to make us be better soldiers too, because you can make that decision on, oh, hey, I can get into this school and military school versus getting out of the Army, and this is the reason why I should go to that military school, and there's going to be value add. Yeah. Or if I'm getting out, what school, why do I want to go to that school? What are the organizations that are going to get me connected? Some of the stuff that Ed was talking about with like Special Forces Association is like, hey, I'm retiring and I'm moving out to the middle of nowhere, Wyoming. And there's an SFA there, or at least there's a member that's part of the Special Forces Association. And maybe you wouldn't necessarily get along in other circumstances, but the fact that you have that joint experience, or that experience where you can connect, where you can identify, and you can say, oh, hey, I know that our personalities may be a little bit different, but hey, you and I have seen and experienced different things.
Yeah, it's immediate credibility.
Yep.
Right? Like your guard is down, right? Because when you know that we've never served together, I don't know you from Adam, but you wore the tab or you were in the unit, we've got something naturally we can discuss. But you also said something else. I mean, isolation, and I know, Ed, you want to talk about SFA or SF for life, but like isolation's a double-edged blade, right? Like we all have probably visions of retiring to the mountains where we don't see or talk to anybody for weeks on end. But that's also kind of unhealthy, right? And then on the flip side of it, if you only want to communicate with SOF veterans, like that is probably a bit unhealthy as well, because you're going to have to interact with people from outside the community to get through life, right? So,
I'm PCSing out here in Lexington, Kentucky. I know one other guy in the program. I don't know anybody else buying a house sight unseen. Come to find out, there's 6 other SF guys in the area. I reached out to a couple of them. Hey, would you have been willing to help me? And out of curiosity, of course, right? And one of the guys happens to be like 2 blocks away, right down the street. Like, when I called him, he was like, "Oh, dude, I'm coming down right now." My point is, the SFA, what's unique about the SFA is the membership base. We have all these people that are members that we can leverage, and that's far beyond what is available at one chapter or whatever chapter you're associated with. If you move to a different chapter, like, and I know we're talking about transition now, but like I think that this SF for life concept is even bigger than that. There's a huge spot for older SF guys. Like, they have an incredible amount of situational awareness in the ground, wherever you're going. Like, There's very few things that you're going to do in the military where you're the first person to do it. No one's ever done it before. You're blazing the trail. Like, usually there's somebody that's gone through whatever you're trying to do before, and that you will just consult with that person. Hey, man, I'm going to whatever school. I heard that you went to it, whatever. What were your thoughts? What's going to help me be successful there? This is the same thing. I'm getting out. I'm moving to whatever city. I'm going to start my own business in whatever thing I'm interested in. Any other small business owners in the area that I could talk to and kind of get some situational awareness? Like, these guys, those members are the guys that we need to be talking to and pulling those guys in. So really the SF for Life concept is really about networking our members. I think that we were kind of alluding to earlier, like, listen, some of the chapters are super strong, and some of them, there might be only a few guys in the whole chapter because geographically there's just so few guys in the area, and they're not going to have all those resources. I want to acknowledge that, chapters are going to have their own strengths and weaknesses. But for a guy that's getting ready to get out, like, why wouldn't you become a member? Jump on the website, look on the map, see where everybody's at, where you think you're going to be landing, and start pinging those dudes and saying, hey, man, I'm getting out and coming to the area. This is what I'm thinking about doing. What are your thoughts? And again, maybe they're not going to know anything, but maybe they're going to know somebody else that they can pass you along to. Maybe that won't lead to anything, or maybe it will. Maybe it's going to lead to getting into school or getting a job or getting a promotion. But like, whatever, like, we have these people all over the place with all these different interests in industries, like, but I feel like we're not leveraging like we should. In this SF for Life concept allows us to connect and have that community like we were talking about.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's super exciting. I thinking back on my journey, right? I didn't realize the importance of personal community building, networking, and until a few years ago. And really, it was somebody that, and you, Daniel, being in real estate, you can talk about this, but like, someone told me that my network is my net worth, right? Like, the ability to build out your sphere of influence has a huge impact, and not just financially, but like the ability to ask somebody, hey, I do you know a plumber? Hey, we're going on vacation somewhere. Hey, just that network is a huge, right? And it's huge in real estate and any field in general, but
yeah, in real estate, because you're helping someone establish a home somewhere. And I mean, like, talk about our network. Just back when you and I met, both of us ended up being in the real estate world. You do mortgages, and we connected, and I have no idea what the number of clients we've worked on or worked with together to make sure people get houses. But you start establishing that network, and then you're like, okay, I can help this person establish themselves in this city a lot easier than if I didn't know them before. And we've seen that kind of this base for a network build out from people that I know in the medical world and people that you end up knowing and working with and doing other things. And it just kind of like it snowballs into this bigger thing, kind of like what Ed's talking about is, but at least you have that initial connection where you're able to say, okay, let's do this together, and enough trust, right?
Yeah. I'm really excited about that concept you've been working on, Ed, and Daniel even mentioned this earlier. Like, there's a lot of different special operations nonprofits, right? There, whether it be association or whatever, Night Stalker, Ranger, SF guy. There's multiple, and everybody's kind of pulling on the same membership.
Yeah.
And maybe not going in the same direction. And I would love to see sort of the expansion of all of that, whether bringing SOF together post-SOF, like in a forward direction, whether that's through subcommittees on SFA or however that happens. But
a lot of the chapters, one of the chapters I was involved with out in the DC area, they do a lot of events, co-events or shared events with the UDT SEAL Association, which I thought was super fun. But with the SF for Life concept, I mean, you got to think there's people that they're ETSing out of the military to go back to wherever with no plan, or they have a plan but they don't know anybody on the ground. And that's fine. Like, I want to encourage the guy. There's plenty of them that are like, man, this has been a great experience, but I'm going to get out and I want nothing to do with the military and nothing to do with SF. Like, man, go do it and be successful. But I just want you to know that there is a network available for you should you want to leverage it. Here's how you would access it. You become a member of the SFA. You have access to the SFA website. You can look on there and see where the members are at, see who's got their profile set up, who you can reach out to, engage with, and just know that that is a starting point. I'm certainly not advocating and saying, like, oh, you should only engage with other SF guys when you get out. No, this is just a touch point of other, like we said earlier, like-minded people who have had a similar experience that you can choose to leverage should you want to or not.
Yeah. No, it's a great bridge, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great bridge of that comfort of knowing somebody that's, from the SOF community that can branch out into, other folks within that community. So I think it's awesome, man.
One more thing I'd like to add. We're using the example a couple of times here about like getting out and like where you're going to go, like physically or geographically. I also want to like highlight like the limits of your chapter and say one dude I was talking to who's a 18 echo instructor who's going to get out and get into biomedicine. And like, I don't know if the chapter, if he's going to be in the SFA and somebody else in his chapter is going to be into biomedicine. But former SF guys have like our tentacles run deep and we are involved in everything. Somebody out there has probably got some connections or involved with biomedicine. And this SFA concept, using the SFA membership allows us to network and connect those guys together, even if they're on the other side of the country.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Give some insights on what to do, what not to do. Right. Yeah. Well, we're kind of getting to the end here, Ed, and, appreciate you being on here. You're kind of our guinea pig. This is first episode. You've been a trooper, man. So I appreciate you being here. Before you go, what would be something like a lesson learned? What would you want to tell yourself, I guess, however many years ago when you were transitioning out of SOF?
Ooh, good question. I would probably walk back I wish that we were normalizing and socializing at the Q course graduation. That the whole goal of going to the Q course was make it to a team, make it to a team, make it to a team. I wish they would normalize and socialize that though your team time is fun and fantastic and a great experience, or is for most people, doing a staff job or doing a leadership job after that can be just as rewarding. And even the things on past that, I think I went in really focused on like having my team time, and as soon as I got to team sergeant, I realized, oh my gosh, this is the beginning of the end. And I was unprepared for that. And I wish that we just talked more about like what that looks like. Seeing guys who leave and go on to become in the staff jobs or be the company sergeant major. I think that the O's did it right. They knew from day one their time on a team was very finite, and we all kind of rolled our eyes and laughed a little bit like, oh, I'm going to be on a team forever, when that just wasn't the case. And too often I see guys who are doing great things and successful in their career, though have a hard time with that transition off the team and onto that next gig, which later on they look back on and say, man, that was really great for me and I learned a lot and had a really great time. And that way, being the company sergeant major was just as good a time as being on a team. But it's just clunky, right? Going to SWIC, afterwards, guys are like, man, that was really good. I learned a lot. There's things I can bring back to my new team now. It makes me a better team sergeant. But I assure you, most guys, when they go to SWIC, they go kicking and screaming. That time is never going to happen. So I wish that was something normalized, and I think that would also help with the transition out of the military, because it's just not going to last, right? At some point, you're taking the uniform off and you're getting out, and we know what SF guys are going on to do big and awesome things, and we just want to normalize like that. that is the life cycle, the progression of it, and to normalize that, I think that would help ease some of the clunkiness of the transition.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the goal of AfterSOF is we're looking at, neither Patrick or I did full careers, and we're looking at where are we today and where are the people that we've worked with, and how can we help others who are either retiring out of it or who decided, hey, I'm doing this enlistment and then I'm going to hop on to the next thing. Well, you are value added to whatever community you jump into. Let us help you along that journey. Let us give you some insight from guys like Ed and other people within our community. You know, this is, it's AfterSOF. It's not just when you're there. There's so much more, and it doesn't end at that team sergeant time. It doesn't end at that lead time that you had with whatever team you were with. It goes beyond that.
Yeah. There's a lot of stories to tell from all the guys that served in all different parts of the world, while they're active duty, National Guard, wherever it was. But there's also a lot of cool stories to talk about when it was all over, right? Like the guys that, like Ed, becoming a PhD. We're going to have to call you Dr. Ed here pretty soon, right? Like, incredible stories of folks taking that skill set and moving forward into the community and adding value, not just to their fellow veterans, but the community as a whole. That's it. Yeah. So thanks again, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Yep. And
thanks, guys, for having me on here. I really appreciate it, your time and the opportunity to talk about transition. And thanks for helping me hype up the survey, and I'll get it out to you guys, and you can pass it along.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Cool. Well, this was AfterSOF episode 1. See y'all next week.
Thanks.